Salinas Valley Memorial Healthcare System's humanitarian volunteers. 7,000 miles from here, the volunteer team travels to Tibet, where cultures come together in the name of advanced medical care.
We had thought about it for probably 10 years, and then we're actually able to do this really, I think, worthwhile project.
So anybody who goes to Tibet, you have quite a cultural experience of seeing something that you might see on National Geographic, but when you're there to see it for yourself, it leaves an impact upon you.
A look at Salinas Valley Memorial's World Outreach next on LifetimeTV. Hello and welcome to Lifeline TV. I'm Dr. Bob Morali. The team of humanitarian volunteers here at Salinas Valley Memorial Healthcare System has traveled throughout the world to help hospitals that don't have the level of resources we have in our country. With our partners Assist International and Rotary International, our team takes donated medical equipment that has become outdated here and travels to countries all over the world, installing the equipment and providing training to areas that would otherwise go without. All of the volunteers from Salinas Valley Memorial Healthcare System use their vacation time for these missions, and they pay their own travel expenses. One of the most recent trips took our team to Tibet. High in the Himalayas, they worked to install cardiac care and monitoring equipment and train hospital staff in the use of the new equipment.
Tibet is an interesting place. There are political problems because Tibetans, their allegiance is to the Dalai Lama, and they look at themselves as their own nation. China looks at them as a province. So I stayed away from Tibet for 2 or 3 years until the chief of the hospital called 2 or 3 times to the office, wanted to get a hold of me. They said, I'll be in, Bob Paget will be in on a Friday at 2 o'clock. So at Friday 2 o'clock, I mean precisely at 2, I got a phone call with an interpreter, so it had to be 3 a.m. his time. And I thought, if people work this hard to try to get a job done, then we have to rethink this thing. We're non-political, we are non-governmental, we are non-sectarian, so we ought to live up to what we are. And therefore, we're not going to worry about the politics, we're going to do it for the people of Tibet. The Chinese Association for International Understanding cooperated with us. The Tibetan leadership in the hospital and the medical people there in Lhasa, Tibet, they worked with us. Rotary International worked with us, and our team for this project was Salinas Valley Memorial Healthcare Systems. We also had a province-wide medical education program, and if ever there was a project that brought peace and understanding and brought the Chinese and the Tibetans closer together, it was this project. It was tremendous. And here I stayed away from it because I thought, oh wow, we're going to have political problems. But it was a project like that that just melted people's hearts together because they knew we were there for the common interest of the people of Tibet and to save lives. And when you put in an intensive care, critical care department, immediately, once it's in, you begin saving people's lives.
Everybody's, I think, favorite location to want to go to in their lifetime, because the Tibetans are such kind of unique people. We thought how great it would be to bring in equipment to a hospital that had been built by the Chinese and was staffed by the Chinese, and they have a lot of technology, but they didn't really have the monitoring system that they needed. So we thought, well, if we could do that and then provide an educational program, then it would be very rewarding to get to really know the people and work side by side with them.
Tibet was phenomenal. Just to tell you a little bit about my background, I had read about Tibet and Lhasa and what Tibet was like. And I don't know, I was a young girl, and so I had a lot of expectations about it. And when I was invited to go, it was as if somebody had given me this incredible gift, because I never expected to be invited to go to Tibet or to ever really see it, just to read about it. And I knew what I wanted to see, like the Partula Palace, and I wanted to see, obviously, the people of Tibet. They were very special people. I wanted to see their incredible culture. I knew that there were prayer wheels that people had been standing next to and turning for thousands of years, that people do 100-mile pilgrimages crawling on their knees because of their religious beliefs to get to this epic place for Tibetans. And so I'd heard all the stories, and then I knew the modern 20th century kind of, things that were happening as far as the Chinese occupation of them. So I'm just, for whatever reason, been really always interested in the Tibetan people and Tibet itself and Lhasa. So when I was invited to go on this project, I thought it was an incredible dream come true, and I wasn't disappointed in any way.
Well, Tibet is interesting. I mean, they've got the temples. They have the huge famous temple where the Dalai Lama at one time lived. He's not living there now. He's in Nepal. And so you're seeing people as they have lived for 2,000 years.
The people are also very intense people, and you can see that in their face. You see, they've lived a hard life, a very hard life. It's like a place you've never been to. You see the bumper stickers here, free Tibet and all that, and then you get there, and it's so much bigger than that, because now they're building a train that's going to come from mainland China. It's going to come right into Tibet, and it's going to change Tibet, and when you get there, you feel very fortunate that you got to see a piece of history, because you see the history, you see the age-old country.
Tibet was a hard trip in the fact that it was an altitude. We had to move supplies up to 3rd floor, 4th floor, and a lot of us definitely had to hit an O2 tank because of the altitude. Migraines come to mind because the altitude is so hard on the body itself if you're not used to that altitude, that it becomes more of a physical impairment to be able to complete a simple task. So we had a lot of limitations. Even sleeping through the night was very difficult, because a lot of times you had to cup a hose in between your hand and breathe off of a machine that delivered oxygen that was close to a percentage of 21% we're used here.
A couple of the biomedical engineers' hands were like purple from lack of circulation during the whole trip. So it does affect people a lot more than you think.
Tibet is kind of a mysterious place. You always hear about Tibet, and so when our team was going to Tibet, it was very exciting. And you land in this airport way up in the mountains, and then you realize it's hard to breathe. So you have this huge altitude adjustment of 14,000, 15,000 feet. So your body, you feel it. I mean, your heart's racing and you're kind of out of breath. But that's okay. So you first go to the hotel, and we're all sharing the oxygen at that point.
They had oxygen in the room, an oxygen system in the lobby of the place we're staying.
And then you drop your suitcases, you settle, and then off to the hospital. And then you make your assessment. And it is so different than the United States. It's so different. There's such a need.
You find in most countries the physical facility, the hospital, the building, bricks and mortar itself, actually don't look too bad. You find that in general, the physicians themselves are well trained. but they certainly lack equipment. And when they can get equipment that we bring to them, they're so appreciative of that. And I think the real value we bring is to be able to have these physicians get their hands on equipment to practice and provide that medical care to the local people that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do.
In the second part, we'll be talking about the struggles that we went through to computerize our hospital, which you'll be going through.
Well, in Tibet, I think the technology is quite a bit behind, and we were bringing technology to them in that sense. Well aware of the benefits that could be gained from technology, but really I was talking to an audience who would like to have it but don't have it yet. So as an example, I asked one of the questions the audience was, do you have any computers here? And basically the answer was no. So I walked out on the wards and saw how they collected information. It was all handwritten. So maybe it was a way for us to give them a vision of what would be coming down the road in a not too distant future in a country that is basically part of China now.
I think the hospital was really receptive to the program, educational program, and they are real fast learners so that they could, activate the internet. They knew exactly the equipment that was installed, how to reach us as far as helping maintain it. So Brad Carrot and his whole staff can go back and forth and help them do that.
Again, it was an interesting trip because you look at a population of people that are so intrigued by the Western people. They're interested in seeing us, and yet in the same coin, they don't know what to think of us in a lot of cases. There hasn't been a whole lot of people up in that area. It's interesting to work in a hospital and see the talent that is there, and the challenges they had was the lack of the equipment. We brought in a lot of telemetry and just hooking up a coax cable. I had probably 15, 20 people watching me just how I was hooking together a connector. Equipment doesn't run that well. Fans don't turn that much air to keep them cool. We had a lot of heating issues, overheating issues on the equipment itself. We actually lost a hard drive because of it and a power supply.
So the first thing is they look at the plan and they walk the area. And then where are we going to put these bedside monitors? And then they have to figure out, do they use cell phones or what kind of radio frequency do they use in this building? Because they're going to be running cable and putting antennas so that it works when we leave. And so there's all those kind of obstacles.
I was able to go help a people who I've been very concerned about with what's occurred in their country. That I think is a very unique culture that needs to be salvaged and honored and respected. And one of my largest concerns was that we would install the cardiac monitoring equipment and then it would be possibly used for only VIPs, and that it wouldn't go to the people who actually live in Tibet. And that did not happen. We installed the monitoring equipment immediately that day. The Tibetan patients were placed in those rooms back again, and the monitors were placed on them, and there was a lot of celebration and joy, but definitely the equipment was there for the people of Tibet. So it was a great trip.
It was a very nice facility. It was, and you could see a little bit of the not cultural clash, but just difference where all the doctors are Chinese and very few Tibetans. And yet we did meet some Tibetans that were trained, and they were trained mostly in Russia. And then the Russians had left Tibet, they pulled out. Because actually that was Russia's biggest military base in the world, was located right next to Tibet, Mongolia. So there's this whole Russian influence. Now there's this whole Chinese influence. And in those huge countries are going to, of course, control the smaller ones. And so now with the new railroad coming up that they spend $11 billion on, that will change the whole culture. So it was nice to be in that area before it changed. Kind of like being into East Germany before the wall came down.
That hospital was basically what I see as being more like the old Soviet hospitals, sort of a cinder block type of style. But so it was an older hospital, but they had rewired it to be readied and prepared for the monitoring equipment. So and there's a lot of new energy in as far as being focused medically, with the Chinese government being involved. So that there's a lot of perceived things that aren't going well, but one of the things that are going well is all of the energy regarding providing medical care for Tibetan people there. So the hospital was it was strong enough to accept this new technology and be able to use it.
In the main hospital, we were able to come in and put in an ICU monitoring system, an 8-bed unit with a central nursing station that would be well over $1 million in the United States. And then we're able to install a telemetry system where you can walk around with the monitoring system intact, so that if you have an incident, it comes back to the main station and people can make sure you're okay and you transition out of that unit. That unit would be another $1 million in American hospital. And would probably take, well, it would take 4 months to get the permit, probably take another 4 months to install. And we're able to do this in 1 week's time. So it's exciting to actually see it go through the whole ceiling, be installed professionally, follow blueprints, and have the manufacturer, one of the national manufacturers, equipment in a foreign country being used. And they were very, very appreciative of it. And there's other equipment that comes along with that ventilating equipment and other support equipment, so a lot of supplies we provide. And then we leave a whole kit of tools so they can maintain everything, which to them is a huge investment and a resource that they will appreciate, and we give that as a gift.
There certainly were brilliant physicians there, both Chinese, and then they were training Tibetan people. Most of the physicians there are Chinese physicians, and they're top-notch, totally aware. They just did not have the equipment they needed to take care of people. So they were very pleased about the installation. And actually, we had a Chinese physician. She had been one of the physicians we worked with when we were in China with the installations, and she couldn't get her hands around people donating their time and their money, their resources, to go to countries and do something like this, the projects that we've been involved in. So she actually volunteered her services from Chengdu, China, to come to Tibet. And she said to us, after I saw what Americans could do, I wanted to be able to donate myself and my services to other countries that need it. So I thought that was a great thing. She was our interpreter, she was a physician, and she helped with the installation, and she did a great job.
Well, I think the hospital is one effort on the Chinese government's part to appeal to the people of a conquered country who have, ironically, a high level of heart disease because they eat a lot of yak and drink butter tea. So I thought that was quite interesting. I had a preconceived notion that they would probably be healthy living in these high altitudes, but high degree of coronary disease.
I have no idea what this is.
And the food and the meals are something that you just don't normally see here in the United States. It's something that's unique. The food is, I wasn't really up on yak eyeballs with nerve endings hanging out the back, and I think they call it gems of the desert. And it was not something I had to claim that I was a vegetarian during that time period. But a lot of good came out of that trip, and the fact that we had to travel so far and make a mission to get so high up in the mountains.
The one thing I can tell you, whether you are in Mexico or Tibet, Cuba or Africa or the United States, healthcare professionals, they're very similar. They may not speak the same language, but they love and have passion for what they do. They love patient care. They love helping. And we had that same experience there.
To work on getting the equipment donated to this project and make sure it was in good working order before being shipped over here.
We put in an intensive care, critical care department. We put in a 6-bed full perimeter cardiac care monitoring system with central stations. We put in 6 step-down units. We also put in a telemetry system through the whole hospital. And we had a province-wide medical education program with Sam Downing, the Chief Executive Officer of Salinas Valley Memorial Hospital, and Mike Profumo, recently retired from PricewaterhouseCoopers.
We call it humanitarian outreach program. It's really taking the resources that we have here in America and bringing them to other countries. And it's, in all cases that I've been involved, it's really stepped up the quality of care in that particular hospital, that particular area, that would have otherwise not happened.
But I think sometimes doing the right thing for the right reason at the right time without any hope of payback is probably one of the highest forms of behavior. And I think that's kind of what's done on these outreach missions.
And when we were doing our outreach with NASA for three-dimensional imaging, and they were talking about our reputation as a medical facility. They knew we had a lot of high-tech equipment, but they said one of the things that impressed them the most was our international outreach as Neighbors Who Care, which surprised a lot of people. So I thought, gosh, what a small world.
Salinas Valley Memorial Hospital is one of the best hospitals, I think, in Northern California. We've done over 10 projects with them around the world, in places like Tibet and China and Africa. And why look anywhere else when you have such outstanding people? You know, I would call them, with the work of Assist International, we've done over 60 medical projects in 39 countries around the world. They're the A-team. You have strong people that go and they get along well with each other. And you know, when you're going to a new culture and you're traveling a lot, you get very little sleep. You need to have people that are a real team, and the Salinas Valley Memorial Hospital is a real team. Never have ever questioned the teamship, and it's not about us, it's not about me. It's about, we've got a high calling here. We need to get something done. We're going to work together to see it happen.
I think also it was that we were able to bring our family, we were able to bring our 3 children that were, you know, young adults, that were able to go hiking on their own and get up in the morning and go to the top of the mountains with the local people. And at the same time, we were able to physically help install the monitors. And so they were respected, valued, and were able to be part of not only the installation, but they were able to make their own journey that they had talked about.
So it was a great experience to meet new people and to meet the people of the land. You know, to meet a different culture and to enjoy the differences, and yet know we all share a common concern for our families, medical care.
The outcome was a success. It wasn't a fully operational network system that we completed. All the bedsides communicated through the network, all the telemetry worked quite well, and they seemed to grasp the training very quickly.
So we planned it, and it was very successful, and then we worked real hard installing everything and doing the educational program, and then we were able to travel within the region, which was even, to me, more exciting because we hit a very, at a monastery, we hit a once a year religious revival event, and National Geographic was there, and all these cultures came together, and it was, gosh, it was exciting to be there. We were fortunate enough to be touring their religious facilities, and they were explaining to us how they train their young Tibetans that are in their prime of their training, where they have to recite what they learn, and they have to talk back and forth to each other and defend their position. The chanting, to me, in the outside and inside the facility, was very impressive. It definitely has an effect on you. So I think it was a great experience to see that. So when we were able to observe this, we were able to mingle with them and actually talk to them.
A great deal of goodwill was generated from the trip, and one of my perceptions was turned 180 degrees. As somebody in the West, we tend to idealize Tibet, the book, let's see, Lost Valley and Shangri-La, and we have this perception that Tibet's this wonderful place. And you go there and you see the abject poverty and disease, and the reality of it is not that great. And when I came back here, I talked to somebody who was went through the Bodhisattva training with the Dalai Lama in a group, and she said, well, the irony is that they tend to think of the United States as Shangri-La, and that it's a blessing to be born in this country, to live in this country, because we've done something right in our prior reincarnations to actually live here. So that was 180.
And I think our friendship is also in the interest of both Chinese people and American people.
And then at the end, we always have a celebration. We have a dinner and exchange plaques, and we'll have a plaque from Rotary International, Assist International, the hospital. Usually it's all on one plaque, but it might be on one or two. And then we'll have different speakers talk about what it meant to them. And they had a lot of very influential dignitaries that were there from China and from Tibet. And they would follow tradition, and so people would get up and they'd go eat. And so it was nice to see that we could kid around and joke. It was like a big family. And anytime you close a project like that, there's a lot of emotions, because you know you're leaving, you know you've had this great experience, you've been in very rural areas that you'll never be back to, and so that whole emotional element takes place. And so it's exciting yet sad at the same time. We enjoyed it, and I think that they're such outstanding people.
Well, that wraps it up for this edition of Lifeline TV. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dr. Bob Morali. See you next time.